Kamala pivots to Trump, sacrificial wolf and lamb. Are you a Russkie? The Monica Perez Show starts now. This is Monica Perez, and the latest episode of my show with Havore Morich and Parallel Systems Mike called Cognitive Dissidence is in the podcast feed right now. I put it up today, and I'm restreaming it on the video platforms across the platforms on Thursday at 2:00 because I'm not going to be here for a newsreel, but it's great, and you are going to want to tune into that. It's really fantastic. I love it. Today, we have a lot of stories. I've got some stories I want to follow up on that I've covered in the past, and then I want to hit some big ones from today. A lot going on right now. So I am probably going to take this show down after off of YouTube. I just don't think it's safe. So, especially since everybody's a Russkie. Okay, so just a couple of updates. One is an update on the sinking of this yacht, the Bayesian. I'm just weirded out by this whole story. It was Mike Lynch was this billionaire. I told you about this before. He was here under house arrest. He was exonerated or found not guilty when he was accused of fraud and a bunch of other things in a deal where he sold his company to Hewlett Packard for $11 billion. And if I recall correctly, they had to take like an $8 billion write-off, and they want their money. So this cruise that he was on with people who were involved in that, they were celebrating his exoneration. That was to celebrate his escaping a criminal conviction. But in England, where he's from, the judge is deliberating whether or not to award Hewlett Packard $4 billion for in compensation partially for their losses. Hewlett Packard announced that it is going to continue to pursue that money. And I'm assuming that the heirs are his wife who survived this. She was injured. She's one of the only 2 people who were injured. 6 people died, and everybody else, mostly crew, emerged unscathed. And then her other daughter, their daughter Esme, who's 21, wasn't on the boat. But who died in the boat was Mike and his daughter Hannah, and his Jonathan Bloomer, a past chairman of Autonomy, the company that he had sold to Hewlett Packard. He was the chairman of Morgan Stanley International. His wife also died. Christopher Morvillo, partner at the law firm that had to do with this case, and his wife, and then the chef's yacht. But it's weird that just those players died. I thought that all the crew survived, but all the guests died. And then I also found it weird that I heard that at least 4 of the people who died did not have any water in their lungs, which means that they did not die by drowning in water. The assumption that we're told is that they died by suffocation because they were in an air pocket. And so for that to work, you'd have to pass out and not fall into water, because you would pass out and then inhale water. So it would have to be an air pocket that never filled up with water. I presume they can figure that out. I think this seems like foul play, because the story of this yacht, which the builder insists was unsinkable, it's an unsinkable yacht. So there had to have been something wrong with it. Like somebody had to have not battened down the hatches or whatever. Now, in my opinion, the investigation should figure this out, but we haven't heard anything about that. The only other ship around, the captain of that boat, they saw the storm coming. He said he never saw anything like it. He never saw anything that much water fall out of the sky. He never saw a yacht or any other vessel sink that fast, and his boat emerged unscathed. So these are all very strange details, and I'm going to continue to pay attention to it. Another follow-up story is the Georgia school shooting from last week. I basically never follow these stories. I'm sure that you may notice that people, maybe they don't like it. I don't like to give them oxygen at all. But this one, I know somebody from the area, and so I'm getting details before they're coming out in the news. Some of them may not have come out in the news, but just a few emerging details, and then I've also kind of drilled down into what it's all about, like what they're the big T they, what they're doing with the story. It's not just a tragedy, and it's a terrible, terrible tragedy. Like to hear the stories of what happened, and I absolutely believe them. Like some things I was thinking this, like, did they give us the hoax idea and actually a couple of hoaxes along the way to get people like me and you who know that there's a real historical thing called false flags and they happen and the powers that be are sometimes behind them. Real people get killed. It's terrible. 9/11, for example, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion too. So if if you thought that was a hoax, it wouldn't be as upsetting. You wouldn't have to hunt down every last detail. So why not just make them hoaxes and then nobody gets hurt? You get your policy change that you're looking for. Well, I think they did that for a while and but not all of them are hoaxes and maybe they gave us hoax to make people like us not worry too much about these events. Some of these events really do like I thought Vegas, I didn't know. It's like did people really die there? Yes, there's a ton of footage, like, definitely, yes. So what was it? That's kind of a mystery what that one was all about. Some people think they cracked the code, but so I, like, dismiss a lot of this stuff. Did it really happen? How am I supposed to know I'm not there? There's no doubt in my mind this really happened, and I saw yesterday the dash cam or the chest cam, whatever footage from the cops who the sheriffs, I think it was, who went and interviewed Colin and Colt about a little more than a year ago. Gray, that's the father and son. And so you could see it's sheriffs. It's not the FBI, even though many, many mainstream news outlets say it's the FBI. So they're correcting it now when it's obvious. But one thing they're not correcting, and that is that the tip the FBI got was about Colin Gray, the father, not about the son. That is not the name that was in it. They saw the kid there and they started talking to him, or they asked the father. Of course, you don't see the whole conversation start to finish. The Colin and Colt are wearing giant crosses, and that seemed weird to me. My friend suggested maybe they wanted to make a certain impression. I got the feeling that the dad did want to make a certain impression, and when the son was saying, like, I really wasn't bullied, he said, "Now, son, tell the truth about that. I already told them that you were." And it's like, okay. And the rumor has it there was a lot of domestic abuse in the father's childhood. And, maybe in the here and now, I don't know if that's been verified or not. And it's just something weird. And then the mother called the school, was on the phone for 10 minutes, was trying to get him out of class. I think the rumor is that he had said to her, "I'm sorry for what's about to happen." She figured that something was up. The grandfather and the sheriff was denying that that ever even happened yesterday. But I think he changed his tune because I believe there's evidence that there was such a call. The school did not get him out of class as she asked. I think she eventually got in the car and just started driving there to try to, I guess she got some forewarning of what was going to happen, or she had because of he said that. The grandfather, I believe, called the father evil, said he thought he was behind it. Like there is something really uh up there. And the reason I'm getting into this, and I'll just give you the kind of punchlines, is that they're using this. They're going to use this. I talked about 2 weeks ago. I said they're trying to blame other people for actions. They're trying to disconnect mens rea from actus reus. It's a tried and true. It's a long-standing legal requirement that for a crime you have to have the mental intent and then you have to do the action. But Charles Manson kind of broke from that. He was the one with the intent, but other people did the action. That was weird and wrong. And that's what they're trying to do with parents and other people. And I think the point is to get you to feel responsible for the behavior of others, to watch them, to report on them, but more important to say, you know what? I don't need this. We need to have, we need to get we need to have a priori restraints. We need the government to intervene at the slightest provocation so I don't have to worry about it. Or the fact that you're getting everybody to report, then you're escalating the reporting, and then you're escalating the response. So what people are kind of saying is the FBI had a tip and they didn't arrest them. Could they arrest everyone on tips that didn't pan out when you see, because it really wasn't even about the son, the tip. But not only would it be difficult to arrest every single person that had a tip, it's a perverse incentive. It's a moral hazard, because then same thing with red flag laws. Then you go in, you can set somebody up. You could set your mother-in-law up, or a cop could set you up. I had a weird experience with someone in authority literally trying to alter records to create problems that were totally unjustified. So you can get on the wrong side of somebody who has a kernel of power, and they will do stuff like that. I mean, that's the problem. That's why you need process. But of course, the whole gun grab is about eliminating process. What did Trump say? Take the guns first, do process later. So when I look at these stories, I'm not being callous in defending against the policies that they are using these stories to justify. I think that whether they create these events or they let them happen on purpose, or they're creating such a mental insanity in this world, and they know where it's going to lead. They're very sophisticated at that. Or they're just always watching out for the stories that will promote their policies and exploiting them. It doesn't matter, because the policies have absolutely nothing to do with preventing these actual problems. They are not really the best solutions to these problems. If this guy drove his son to do it, actually told him to do it, or encouraged him to do it, I have absolutely no idea. No one's ever said that. I really don't know. The grandfather's comments was extremely vague. I don't know. But if he actually did, that is a crime. That's already a crime. So it's important to discern what's happening. Is it criminal? Is it that humanity for 10,000 years of legal existence missed a basic crime? No, no. So this thing is, because they got this guy who I think potentially sounds like could be a uniquely bad actor. He's a wolf. He's a wolf. And if you use him, everybody wants a wolf off the streets. So I invented the term sacrificial wolf, because nobody cares about due process with them. They don't care about Harvey Weinstein. They don't care about Bill Cosby. They don't care about this guy. But the savvy policymakers know exactly what's coming. And then this guy may have sacrificed his own son for whatever he was up to, whether he himself was driven to do it, or maybe he was doing it to get back at somebody. I really don't know. The mother said she wished it had been, that she said something expressing remorse. I don't want to misquote her, but like wished it had been her or whatever. I don't know. But, there's something unique about this story, and it isn't the policies that are going to be pushed, because now they're talking about using this to make policies not only about gun safety, but also about charging parents. And they've been after that for a while. So I don't know. I will probably not cover this again, but it's a strange story anyway. And not speaking of gun control, I would speak of gun control, but it's actually not in Kamala's campaign platform, which she finally posted on her website. You would expect something about, some of the gun control is the big issue for the Democrats, and immigration is a big issue for Republicans. Neither of them was mentioned on her platform. Tonight is the debate. It's Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, September 10th. The debate begins at 9 p.m. Eastern, and it's on, I think, ABC and NBC. It's going to be like an hour and a half. It's going to be the first time these guys actually meet, Kamala and Trump. And I think what it will do is show us the answer to the question of which one will be selected. And not because I think it'll make people, one way or the other. It may, but because it's going to show you the image that the powers that be want us to absorb. Do they want, if it's just the only debate, do we presume that the winner of the debate is the chosen one? I don't know. And I have the exact same problem with directions. I can't, like when I'm driving. I'm a great driver, but I'm a terrible navigatrix. And I get also with the election. So I have the same problem. I know how bad I am at predicting elections, and I know how bad I am at directions, that whatever my instinct is, I just pick the other way, the other direction, the other candidate, and it just confuses me. I really don't know, and I guess I overthink it. But with directions, I shouldn't, because that's real. This stuff's all fake, so who can blame you for not knowing? But there are different factors that make me think that one is favored at a given time, or another is favored at another given time. But here, it seems to be leaning towards Trump. But like I said, I'm never right. But what struck me about the campaign thing with Kamala is that she has all her platform issues, and then she has this issue that her last one is Trump Project 2025, and that he's going to make the deficit $5 trillion. He's going to bring in a recession in 2025. Now, the Project 2025 thing isn't even Trump. Also, listing your opposition on your platform is insane. Like, no PR firm would ever tell you to pivot to the competition, ever, ever, ever. No manager would ever tell you to do that in your business strategy. Like, you would never do it. Also, you think she's not going to add $5 trillion to the debt? Definitely. I'll tell you some of her policy positions, ones I've covered before. I won't tell you, but I will hit a few more. She hadn't published it previously, but we've discussed things. Anyway, I don't even want to. I get triggered when I think about some of the worst ones that I've already discussed with you. So she would definitely add $5 trillion to the debt, but to say that he's going to bring a recession in 2025 kind of like didn't go into great explanation. That worries me, because I feel like that's the foreshadowing, and that I just don't, it sucks when everybody's out of work and in debt. Like, recessions suck. People get hurt. And I was hoping that we could avoid it, because COVID was a recession and people already got hurt, went bankrupt and everything. But, I don't know. So let's see both candidates, to get back to who would win, both candidates have potential legitimacy issues, which is absolutely critical. I say every single election, they have to have legitimacy issues. So Kamala was never nominated really through any electoral process. Granted, they would be voting, but people would say she wasn't really the candidate or whatever. And Trump, maybe he's an insurrectionist or whatever the legal stuff comes out. He's a felon. I don't know what's going to happen. They'll say, well, he's not legit. So it could go either way with that. Oh, this is just a little peevish. And I know one is not supposed to be peevish, but like in the first sentence of her campaign thing, it says Vice President Harris and Governor Walz are fighting for a new way forward, as opposed to the one that we're on now, which is an administration she's a part of, that protects our fundamental freedoms, strengthens our democracy, and ensures every person has the opportunity to not just get by, but to get ahead. I don't like split infinitives. So it should be not just to get by, but to get ahead. And I actually learned that in law school. And I learned the not only but also thing, which I didn't know was a thing. If you say not only, you're supposed to say but also. I learned that studying for the LSAT. And so anybody who went to law school should not make those particular mistakes. Not that she's writing her own stuff, but I don't like it. So when I was looking, where'd she go to law school? Because if she went to the same school I went to, then she really would know. But she went to Hastings Law School and Howard University, which is a historically Black university. And Trump said that she was historically Indian, that she used to play that she only just started playing the black card. That was so stupid. But that was one of those things that made me think he was encouraging her to get elected. One of the things she said on her campaign platform is she wants to expand the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. Another that really, really peeves me also, because they act like they're that they say you get a tax refund, but it's not a tax refund. It's you get it whether you pay taxes or not. And frankly, I don't even think you could get it if you paid taxes, because for a single person, for example, you have to make less than $15,000 or $15,570 a year to claim the credit. At that amount, you're making payroll taxes. You're paying payroll taxes probably, but nothing else. And the reason they frame it as a tax credit, even though it is absolutely not a tax credit, it probably does not go to taxpayers at all, is that it's not part of congressional appropriations process. It's actually part of the tax code, I guess. So it sounds good and they don't have to account for it. So I hate that. She said it says she wants to encourage small business. And I'm thinking, really? Wow. Like, what's her angle there? And then I noticed that maybe the only thing programs she's mentioning by name is Black, Latino, and minority-owned businesses and driving VC, venture capital, to rural areas. So those are all politically motivated. And I mean, aren't necessarily what you want is for small businesses that we need that will survive, not to micromanage it for politics, because then you'll actually get failures. That was a big problem with the subprime mortgages, is that I think it was Carter or Clinton, I can't remember who, had changed the requirements because they wanted more people to get loans so that minorities were not discriminated against, but they lowered the standards and the people couldn't pay. That's what those standards were for. And it causes a lot of heartache. Just because you go bankrupt on a loan, you probably put all your own money into it. So I don't like that kind of manipulation. She wants price controls on groceries and drugs. The drugs, I guess, are, didn't we all get forced to get medical insurance? I guess if you don't have Medicare D, I don't know, but it seems like, I don't know. I feel like it's for the insurance companies and not for us. But the food ceilings, food price controls are going to make me nuts, because it's a very competitive industry, food, very, very competitive. So you have a variety of food at every price point. So at no price point, very low quality food, very high quality food, restaurant food, any of that, you can get whatever you want at any price point. And as a matter of fact, I love Whole Foods, even though I'm waiting for it to crash and burn because Amazon bought it, and maybe this is how it will crash and burn. But it's a great example of why we don't need the FDA and how the FDA is regressive in this. Whole Foods has higher standards for their food. Erewhon is some rich one I'm not even ready to walk in the door of out here. Maybe it's everywhere, but it's super, super high end. It's like people take pictures of themselves out front of it. So I'm not going near it. But Whole Foods has higher standard of food and it's more expensive. So I go there when I can, when I want to. If I'm on a diet, not eating that much, I'll go there. But and I've noticed this before. I'm like, I'm so glad it's there. I really love that option. But I'm so glad that our regulations aren't at that level, because poor people or people who don't have a lot of extra money cannot afford this. And if they do, they have to make other sacrifices, and that should be their choice. The way food recommendations move around like crazy anyway, people do need to make their own choices. They need to get educated. So I love that. If you want to have higher quality stuff, it's there. If you don't, you don't have to. If people are too poor to eat healthy, don't we have welfare for that? I'm not advocating welfare. I'm just saying, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do it all, right? So once you give them the money, but a basic thing is that an underlying assumption is that poor people, rural people are too stupid to make the right decisions. That's why that's that limousine liberal thing, that elitist thing from the left that drives a lot of this, take your choices away. Same thing with why they wanted to take away states' rights, gun rights and stuff. They're Southern hicks are too stupid to make good laws, so we need to make them from LA and New York. It's offensive and it's wrong. But it's the excuse they use to centralize control. So they probably don't even care if it's true or not. Anyway, she said she will strengthen Social Security and Medicare for the long haul by making millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share in taxes. And this makes me absolutely insane, between Peter Thiel's thing and her. So you make $1 million in California, you pay 37% taxes, federal. You pay almost 13% taxes in LA, I'm talking about, or maybe it's 1.3 million something. It's high, but then you're paying 13% state and local. So it's 50% off the top. If you had to pay the Social Security, that's 13%. It says that it's you paying 7.5 or whatever it is, maybe it's more, and your employer, but it comes out of their, it comes out of what they're paying you. So that's another really 15% out of the whole thing. So now you're talking 65%. So you're leaving somebody with, what is that, $350,000 who's, say it was $1 million, who's working their ass off, who worked till went to school till they were 30, probably paid all those school loans, live close to the city, work constantly, send their kids to private school. Why is it their fair share to pay more? And then when it comes out at the end, this is what Teal was saying, when it's time to get that Social Security back because it's sold to you as a pension fund, they want to means test it. So if you are the one who is paying the most into it, you'll get none of it back because you'll have made all that money. So that it just, here's the thing, because those people, that exact thing where people are going to work every day and making $1 million, because they only take home 400 grand or whatever, they are the managers. They are the ones who run these small businesses, who may give you variety, give you a better, more efficient business, give you the choices, make them cheaper, make them better. I would say, from my observation, I had friends in Europe from when I was banking, that American managers are the best managers in the world. They're the most respected. They make more. They make like double what they make over there, but they're in demand over there because they know everyone's better off. The customer's better off. The owners of the companies are better off. It just bothers me because they act like there's no impact to these rules, to these price controls and tax rules and spending and debt and deficits. It shapes the country. But, I think that's their point. They want that. They want that flat, bland. I have a Swedish friend. She's a lawyer. She can hardly make ends meet. She said, absolutely everybody's like that except for, quote, rich people. And there aren't a lot of them, and they're not that rich. And it's like, why do you get up in the morning? She's like, she quit her job because she said, I'm not working more than 9 to 5. I don't make enough for that. So I'm going to go get a government job where they only make me work 9 to 5. It's not better. But you probably know all that anyway. She wants to support American workers, and she cites a bunch of legislation that she backed that resulted in almost $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, which is hilarious because she was on the list that Biden, through Bob Ulinsky, was trying to sell the Chinese as people he knew who controlled infrastructure money, and that if you gave him his $10 million, you could get a piece of that action. She's proud of having contributed to that kind of spending. She wants to lower college costs and favor minorities with college subsidies, it looks like to me, because they were the only groups actually mentioned. But here's the thing. There aren't enough spots now that college is like virtually free. There aren't enough spots for everybody in the good colleges, in like the middle and above colleges. And below that, I'm not sure it's worth going to school. Why don't we have tradespeople? People who are smart but not book smart. That's what we used to have. There's value in that, a lot of value. And they make money. They make the same as a secretary who went to college, more. So that's distorting our education. She wants people who take care of loved ones to get paid. I don't like monetizing love. She wants to create millions of new jobs in her fight for the climate or whatever, which, if that's by spending, that is would be trillions of dollars of spending. She wants to coordinate globally, of course. Okay. So last thing I'm going to say on all of that about the election, the debate, or whatever, is, did I mention this? That I think that it's possible that this is another thing that weighs in favor of Trump being the chosen one this time around, is that I think maybe the alleged assassination attempt may have been there to get him some cover if he actually wins, to be just like a figurehead and not actually have to be around that much, because I just can't imagine he wants to work that hard when he's 78. I mean, I just can't see it happening. So maybe they're like, well, he's like afraid of going out, but he sends his best, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, he's playing golf. Um, and then they had the whole "Where's Biden" thing, so he'll be able to say, "Well, I was seen more than Biden." All right, let's do some comments, and then I wanna talk about uh, the quote, "right-wing media" getting arrested. All right. Let us see what we got here. Joseph, he came to a meetup so many years ago, and, I still have that beautiful keychain you gave me. I use it, it's on my key ring, of the easternmost cathedral in Europe, which I love that, thank you. Stuart, hello. Your chickens go to freezer camp on Friday? Ouch. Where are you? Well, I guess people know where you are. I'm not gonna dox you, but if anybody wants to help Stuart wring some necks, I'm sure you will get some chickens in return. Yes, Angus says the Titanic was unsinkable, but did it, what was the story behind that? Was it the Olympus? Who was reading this gave me this information where the Titanic probably was renamed. I can't remember the story, but there's a really crazy backstory about the Titanic. Yes, don't ever call your ship unsinkable. James says they could have nailed Manson on a bunch of other solid, serious crimes. I believe that. Angus says neither should be in the running. This selection is a reality TV show. America has no talent. James, this season sucks. Mm. Oh, I forgot to talk about I didn't know anything about the Haitian cat eating story. I have absolutely no idea. I'm so not I think I'm immune to clickbait. I don't know why. Like the most obvious stories are the ones that pass right over me. And any like crimes against math or economics, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's inflationary. Can you see? Can you believe that? uh Funny. Okay. Angus is making a funny about about Harris monetizing love. Okay, that's very funny. Very, very funny. I did see this article on Charles Manson going to Boys Town. I think it was 14 years old because I was thinking I had just been reading about another tragic 14-year-old. Yeah, very crazy. And the Federal Reserve opponents were on the Titanic. That's part of the story. Absolutely. Um, so Stuart is not far from DC. So if you email me at monicaperezshow@gmail.com and you want to help Stuart, I will forward your information to him. So let's get back to a little more news. I've got another story here. So basically, the upshot of the entire story is anyone who disagrees with Vicky the Noodle's coup is a Russian agent. That's my feeling. And given my position on that for 10 years now, uh, I don't know. Should I chill myself? Because that's definitely a big, big part of this. So the Justice Department put something out. They didn't name names, but it was very clear that Tenet Media was one of the media outlets that, or maybe the one that they were talking about, saying Russian money went in there. Maybe the founders knew. They weren't named in the suit, I don't think. The personalities definitely did not know, but Russia wanted to amplify views that were consistent with its own interests. I mean, I can think of like 4 countries already that we do that, not least of which are the UK and Israel, where it's politicians, media, academics, they're all influenced by that stuff wittingly or unwittingly. I mean, I would say I actually have never done this, but people are always talking about the 6 media companies that run the whole country. Look at who owns the mainstream media. My guess is you will find people with strong political ideologies that use their platforms to promote their viewpoint and their interests. I mean, that's why they buy them. I just don't even understand what the problem is. Now, if it were the Communist Party and it was literally being fed communist propaganda, even then I was like, what are you going to do? It's a free country. But this is what the allegations are, is that it's right-wing media. And historically, I'm not saying with respect to foreign wars, for sure not, but historically, the defenders of the Constitution are on the right. So is it a crime, or is it undesirable for Russia to promote its interests through our media if they're also our interests, or if they just simply promote return to our own foundational laws? I mean, is it de facto wrong for any foreign government to influence us? Because then we would really have to clean house. I would say that you'd have to clean house from every university, every research outlet, every media outlet, politicians, everything, including the people in the White House right now, AF. So, and my first note here is, and don't forget that our only actual proof of Russian interference was a lie. It was the Reid Hoffman thing, Jonathan Morgan, Renee DiResta, New Knowledge, the people who were writing stuff about Russian influence in the election for the Senate were actually pretending to be Russian bots to taint the Roy Moore campaign for Senate in Alabama a few years ago. So that was the first thing I thought about. And the way I was going to approach this story, it's a few days old. You probably heard other people address it, but I want to address it, tell you what I think. So I took the biggest CNN article I could find, and I just decided to just go through it because it was going to cover everything. It's going to have its slant in there. So as I'm reading this CNN document, towards the bottom, like the last couple of paragraphs, this article is about this Russian Justice Department thing, current article, and it starts quoting, of all freaking people, Renee DiResta. I mean, all of that, and she landed on her feet as an expert on Russian election interference, when the only actual election I ever heard interfered with, allegedly by Russians, she was related to. Now, they kind of glossed over her involvement, so we don't really know it. I'll tell you, actually, I looked at the New York Times article, which will be in the show notes at monicaperezshow.com, the New York Times article that talked about it, and they totally whitewashed it, and it's still a scathing rebuke of what they did, and they quote them as saying it didn't affect the election. The hell it did not. It most certainly did. Here's the headline from the New York Times. Secret experiment in Alabama Senate race imitated Russian tactics. So right out of the gate, they're lying. They wanted to taint Roy Moore as being Russian. They promoted a Republican who was challenging him for write-in votes to just draw votes away from him. They liked that. That guy's name was Mac Wilson or Weston Watson. And he said, I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't communicate with them too much. I wanted to meet with them. They wouldn't meet with me. But I did notice that even though they were communicating with me on Facebook, my Twitter following went from 100 to 10,000 overnight. So there you go, people. I am actually like 30 follows away from 20,000. So I'm not going to have that kind of help. So if you're on Twitter and you don't follow me, maybe by the end of the show, I'll be at 20,000, which would be fun. Who knows what that triggers in the cascade, but I'm totally shadow banned, so it doesn't matter. So they did that. Absolutely. I think there's no question about it. The report does not say whether the project. Yeah, so there's a report about this project. The way he says, This is in the New York Times story. One participant in the project reportedly was Jonathan Morgan, the chief executive of New Knowledge. And I believe Renee DiResta was at New Knowledge or an affiliated firm. A firm that wrote a report released by the Senate Intelligence Committee earlier this week about Russia's social media operations in the 2016 election and its efforts to hurt Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump. Jonathan reportedly contacted Renee DiResta, who later joined his company and became the leading author of the report about the Russian interference efforts for the firm. He was asking her for suggestions of online tactics that were worth testing. He said, we orchestrated an elaborate false flag operation that planted the idea that the Moore campaign was amplified on social media by a Russian botnet because he was doing better than they wanted him to do because he was a little offbeat. Or maybe he was bad. I don't know, but he was doing better than they wanted him to do. The internal report said it also took credit for radicalizing Democrats with a Russian bot scandal after experimenting with many of the tactics now understood to have influenced the 2016 elections. These are all in quotes. There was a whistleblower who told the whole story. He said he was in the room when they said what they were going to do in this election, and it freaked him out. He didn't like it. It was interfering in democracy. Doug only won by like less than 22,000 votes. It was less than the amount of write-in votes that actually there were. So the write-in votes were important. There were 1.3 million ballots cast. So 22,000 is not a lot. But in the CNN article from just a few days ago, it says, here you go. Well-sourced state actors use broadcast and social media simultaneously across the overt to covert spectrum, wrote Renee DiResta, a former research manager at the Stanford Internet Observatory and author of the book Invisible Rulers, The People Who Turn Lies into Reality. Well, she should know. At this point, she goes on, this is CNN quoting her without mentioning the real Russian interference. At this point, there are a bunch of strategies Russia is working concurrently. As one is made more costly or less effective, they leverage others. This situation is essentially a front media operation, a fairly old approach, though now the most effective, useful idiots may be influencers rather than journalists of yore. So she's saying the journalists of yore were useful idiots, and these guys are not journalists, but they're still useful idiots, the way I read that. So the CNN article said here, now this reveals a big part of the agenda. Okay. While the influencer, podcaster, and online content creator space is booming, the indictment shows how open the new media ecosystem is to infiltration, where independent creators operate with few guardrails and little transparency. These were not independent operators, by the way. This was Tenet Media. So they were not, these people were all affiliated with each other. They were getting a paycheck from an organization. So I guess this is just another way to push the smaller media companies down, just like the new algorithms and the Facebook deals. I know people in kind of smaller media from when I was in WSB, people who branched out, and they're just getting crushed. And that is a part of it. It says, so the article makes it clear that Tenet Media is the target of the DOJ. It says some of Tenet's commentators had careers at more mainstream media outlets prior to striking out on their own. Tim Pool was a reporter at Vice Media, and Benny Johnson was a writer at BuzzFeed and the Independent Journal Review before becoming MAGA influencers. Rubin, once known as a libertarian who worked at the progressive network, The Young Turks, before making a right turn into conservative media, hosts The Rubin Report on The Blaze and YouTube. Others like Laura Southern make their name in alt-right white nationalism spaces, although she denies being a white nationalist. So actually, I don't listen to any of these people. I don't know anything about this. I should probably know a little more than I do, but I just don't. So, but it looks like every single one of those people came from other ideologies. They're not alt-right from birth or whatever. And to me, that means that, and they're working for a company that's paying them. And they're probably like that. And I don't blame them for liking to get paid for their work. But I'm going to do a show with Steve Poikonen on next Wednesday at 2:00 here. 2:00 Eastern, but it'll be in the podcast feed eventually. But we're going to be talking about controlled opportunists, which he discussed with Sam Tripoli. It was a great show, and I want to talk to him a little bit more about that. But I want to talk about this. So if these people they have different ideologies than they used to, maybe they are flexible that way because that's how you make a buck. I mean, I'm sure there are people on haven't even candidates have changed party for their own benefit. So if these guys are getting a paycheck, this says they should investigate where their paycheck is coming from. Well, it was coming from the company they worked for. I mean, how deep are you supposed to dig? How deep do you dig? I don't even know. I mean, when I was at WSB, I did know that there was this family that owned it that used to be, I think, the governor of, a senator and a governor and stuff like that. But I didn't even know I didn't know anything about them, you know? But to the extent that that company or these people are, I always assume everybody's fake. Maybe they're witting, unwitting. I really don't know. But you can see somebody says all the right things, but emerges like splashes on the scene really big or whatever. And you're like, what could this person seems fake, but what could the angle be? What could the angle possibly be? Well, it could be to be a taint agent, because if this is happening, whoever is really behind it, and the article says it was an anonymous person, the funder was a fictitious person. So they don't really know. Nobody really knows who gave the money. But if this is going to bring down an entire industry, transform an entire industry, then that's a limited hangout, witting or unwitting, that didn't have to include any misinformation. It didn't. They just maybe have to go down without a fight. That's one way to do it. I don't know. This I thought was funny. It says Poole, they're talking about Tim Poole, known for donning a black beanie on his broadcast, has used his show to host far-right extremists because he came from the left. He's not a far-right extremist, including Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, which definitely I'm sus of, and Jack Posobiec. Earlier this year, Poole interviewed former President Donald Trump on his podcast. End of paragraph. It's like, that makes him a Russian agent, a far-right extremist. He's the president. He's probably going to be the president again. Crying out loud. It says they're just the strategy was to amplify views that these people already had that the Kremlin liked. According to intelligence agencies, the Kremlin has sought to boost Donald Trump's candidacy, questioning the West's support for Ukraine and criticizing elements of the LGBTQ movement. According to the intelligence agencies, that's not a source. I mean, that's an intelligence. They're there doing other stuff, not telling us the truth. That's not even what they pretend to do. So it says the Justice Department said the views in the influencer videos promoted Kremlin interests and narratives, including increasing domestic division, and aimed to weaken U.S. opposition to core government of Russia interests, such as its ongoing war in Ukraine. So there you go. If you object to the war, if you object to us being involved in a foreign war, you're a foreign agent. And that is exactly, you know how old that is? You know how old that is? That Adams had that with the Alien and Sedition Acts, where aliens had problems, but even Americans, here's one, and this was about in 1798, they wanted to go to war with France and didn't want any lip from the people who were going to pay for it and send their sons. It says the Sedition Act made it a crime for American citizens to, quote, print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing about the U.S. government. It goes on and on. I'm not going to read you all that stuff, but it is very typical. Lincoln did it. Wilson did it. Didn't Wilson do it? Where they threw them in jail for opposing the war. And that's part of it. Part of it is chilling, making sure that we chill. And this idea of the problem is that independent creators operate with few guardrails and little transparency. So it's all pointing to the same stuff. We see these patterns over and over again. And to me, because they're always looking for agenda items to support their policies, that's how you know that this stuff, that at the very least, certain stories are promoted over others. But here we're talking about the Justice Department. So they've got an agenda in mind. And it's pretty nerve-wracking, to be honest, because you don't have to have any mens rea, and they can mess with you. I don't like it. That's why it's good to be small, which I have been for a very long time. Anyway, okay, so now I do think that we can end with something light. If you haven't heard my conversation with Kali Fontanilla, it was posted last week. It was really nice. She's a nice lady, and it was interesting. It had a little twist in it that I found fascinating. So check that out. You can also see it on video. But here is the lovely and talented Kali Fontanilla, and with this, I bid you good day.
Hi, Miss Luna, activist teacher here again, and I just wanted to share with you guys about how I am starting a new communist lunch program in my classroom. So what I've been noticing is that my white privileged kids, they have much better lunches than my BIPOC students. So I wanted to make sure everything was more equitable in my class, so we started having a communist style lunch. So what I do is I ask all of the kids to put their lunches all together, every item of their lunch inside of a basket, and then at lunchtime I distribute it all equally to them so that they can all have more equitable lunches. And I have this one white privileged student, and he's always complaining to me that he's getting the hummus and carrot sticks while the other kids are getting, the BIPOC kids are getting the 6-pack of Oreos. And I tell him, even though I am doing my best to make this equitable, we also have to make up for 300 years of oppression.